1 Corinthians 10:14. Wherefore, my dearly beloved, flee from idolatry. So now Paul is speaking once again to the Corinthians. It said, flee from idolatry. Why? Why is he speaking to them about idolatry? Because these people that Paul is speaking to, which are being called Gentiles and heathens and strangers, are Israelites that got caught up in the Hellenistic period that were worshiping the idols of the Greeks and sacrificing to the idols of the Greeks back then. So Paul is explaining to them that, look, this is not the way. You got to change that, and you got to come back in the right way. And that's why he preached to them about YAHAWASHI, and he preached to them about the sanctification and the atonement, you know, because they were trying to get the atonement through these different sacrifices. But YAHAWASHI already became the ultimate sacrifice. He was explaining that to the Israelite foreigners, and he was explaining that to the Jews that knew that they were Israelites. Matter of fact, I got something real quick. Just bear with me 1 second here. All right, this is in the book of First Maccabees, chapter. I had the chapter 2, verse. I'll start at 15. This is when after Antiochus Epiphanes, and he came into the city, desecrated the temple, you know, had pigs, swine's flesh sacrificed on the altar, you know, and then he had officers and wicked Israelites that were going around to the different Israelite peoples and making them to sacrifice swine on the flesh, you know. And this is when Mattathias and the 5 brothers known as the Maccabees came into being, which the word Maccabees really was applied to Judas. He was called Judas Maccabees. The word Maccabees goes back to the Hebrew word Makobath, which means hammer. He was putting hell on them nations. So this is First Maccabees 2:15. It says, in the meanwhile, the king's officers, meaning the officers of King Antiochus, such as compelled the people to revolt. Now the word revolt is to fight against, you know. So they fought against what? The law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. So he's causing some of the Israelites to revolt. It says came into the city of Modin. Now Modin was a city where Mattathias and his sons were from, to make them sacrifice. See, because it was an order. You got to remember that when you go to the Hellenistic period, that was an actual order for them to actually sacrifice these idols and sacrifice swine's flesh. It was an actual law that was written into effect. And pretty much when you go back in the history and you read about this stuff, and you read about the laws of Antiochus Epiphanes, or the laws of Nebuchadnezzar, or the Romans, or any nation that said, look, you got to do this, you got to sacrifice to this idol, you got that's all a part of the history, so that we can have examples today of these things, because they're coming again. You know, when they make this chip mandatory, it's going to be in law. You know, look, you have to take this chip, just like you got to get a driver's license, or you can't drive. It's going to be a law where you're going to have to take the microchip, or else, you know. And this law that was put in here of them not circumcising their children or sacrificing swine's flesh was an actual law that was decreed by Antiochus Epiphanes. This First Maccabees 1:41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom. See, he wrote. This is a prescription, prescribe. The word scribe, it goes back to the word write. So this is a something that was written by King Antiochus to his whole kingdom, meaning everywhere where he was ruling, that all people should be one, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. So this was an actual law that was in the books of the Greeks. And they were compelled to do this, because if they didn't, the penalty was what? Death. And as you read down further in this chapter, it shows you, Salakia, how certain women and their children were put to death because they sacrificed their children. I mean, they circumcised their children, Salakia. All right. So going back to First Maccabees 2, it says, and when many First Maccabees 2:16, and when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done. Yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. So this is this officer coming, and he's really pretty much trying to talk to him now. But this was done on a thing of it was forced. It's just like this microchip. When they give the decree or the order or the law, you're gonna have to take it. You know, and that's why we're going to have to rebel against this devil, you know, because the same way that Mattathias and Judas Maccabees and them and certain other Israelites rebelled against the Greek Empire, you know, and rebelled against certain parts of the Roman Empire. They wouldn't do certain things that the Romans wanted them to do, or they wouldn't do certain things that Nebuchadnezzar wanted them to do, like bowing down to his God and his idols and all that. It says, Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away everyone from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. The Most High forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. So you had this simple-minded, wicked-ass Israelite that went on the altar to sacrifice this swine. So these people that the Apostle Paul was speaking to in Corinth were descendants of the ones that were compelled to do these things, that were doing those wicked acts. So he's coming to them and bringing them back, because the Most High made him a prophet to the Gentiles or to the Israelite foreigners. So reading on, which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, that he couldn't contain himself. You know, he said, this mother, and his reins trembled, so he was so pissed off and so zealous that he actually started trembling. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment, but he inside he was trembling and shaking, but he was just being cool because he was a ruler, so he had to contain himself. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. So he took that nigger and killed his ass for sacrificing swine's flesh on the Lord's altar. Also the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down.